Josie Lauducci mastered the quarantine life before quarantining was cool. She went long stretches where she saw no one but her family. She lived in tight quarters on a shoestring budget. She homeschooled. And here's the amazing part. She did it all on purpose, on a sailboat. Here's Josie in an interview about a year before the pandemic hit.
Okay, we're on a boat out in the Pacific Ocean. There's nowhere to go. You can't just jump off and go to shore. And we had a really good time, just day in and day out. And you're together, and the whole world is doing its thing, there's chaos and all this stuff happening. But we're together as a family on the boat, and it's like, okay, what are we going to have for breakfast? And what are we going to do for school today? And then lunch and dinner, and what's outside, and it's just very present, very day to day.
This is the How She Moms podcast, where we talk about how different moms solve the same problems. I'm Whitney Archibald, a mother of 5 kids myself. I collect ideas so you can pick and choose what works for you and your family. Now, of course, there are some big differences between mandatory quarantines, with all the fear and uncertainty that came with it, and choosing to sail the Pacific with your family. It almost seems silly to compare the two, and I don't want to diminish or sugarcoat the turmoil and loss of the COVID-19 pandemic. But listening to this interview again reiterated to me that there were some beautiful things about disconnecting from normal life and spending such concentrated time with our families. For this bonus episode, I wanted to bring you the full conversation I had with my lovely friend Josie Lauducci back in April 2019. I used excerpts from this interview in episode 7, How She Strategizes, but I thought you'd like to hear the whole interview because Josie is so delightful. In fact, because my regular podcast format uses just snippets of all the interviews I've done, and since there's so much great stuff in the rest of the interviews that you didn't get to hear, I've decided to start making the full interviews available through Patreon. This month, I'll include 2 bonus interviews on my regular podcast feed, and then starting in October, you'll be able to subscribe to my Patreon account to get access to interview episodes on the weeks that I don't release a regular How She Moms episode. So, my regular episodes will come out on the 1st and 3rd Tuesdays of each month, and I'll release interview episodes for Patreon subscribers on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of the month. Okay, back to Josie. This lovely mother and I go way back to junior high. She was a year younger than me, so I didn't know her as well as I would have liked, but we had some grand adventures in our day. A few years ago, I found out that she and her family were sailing around the world on a 40-foot sailboat. Amazed, I started obsessively catching up on her blog, afamilyafloat.com, and eventually, once she reached land, we reconnected. Rather than ramble on about how amazing Josie is, I'm going to play our interview so you can see for yourself. I started by asking her when her family started living on a sailboat and when they decided to set out on their grand adventure. Here's Josie.
When I met Christian in 2009, he had already been living on a boat, so
Okay.
it's kind of part of the package deal. If I wanted to be with him and Nina, because she comes from a different mom, then the boat life was going to be the life we would live. So we met. I was in Santa Barbara and he was
Okay.
in San Francisco. So I would go up there and he would come down to Santa Barbara and get to know each other more. And so yeah, I would spend like 5 days at a time and just really loved the boat lifestyle. It kind of took me back to my childhood camping type experiences, just like simple, cozy living.
Right.
And yeah, I really liked it. And so, long story short, moved up to San Francisco, moved on the boat, and the girls got along really well. And it really, I don't want to say forced them to play, but it's like, okay, we're in a small space. We're here together. You're my friend. Like, we should be
Right.
friends. We should be friends. We're in a tight space together. So let's make the best of it and play together. And that was really cool to see as a blended family. You hear all these stories about the siblings not getting along and struggling to make it blended properly. And I don't know, it just felt really good, and it felt like it forced us to be close and to love each other as a family from the very start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing
Yes.
like jumping right in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Christian's stepmom, but he calls her mom. She lived on the boat with his dad
Okay.
and Christian since he was 12 years old, I think. And she was very much into psychology and parenting, and her belief was 1 year on a sailboat together in a marriage is like 7 years
Oh,
for
I
the
believe
standard family.
that. Or more.
Or more, right? Like, because you're just faced with everything. So I feel like even though we got married after 7 months, we had spent so much time together. It was really like a few years,
Right.
of getting to know each other first, and as a parenting standpoint too, kind of taking the role as a mom for Nina, and he as a dad for LMA. It was just there and solid. So that was the start of it. And then, so while we were dating, we took a trip down to Mexico, and that was a sail from San Francisco just down to Ensenada. And we did a month
Wow.
doing that,
With the girls?
and with the girls.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, with the two girls. So LMA was 2.5.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Nina then was 7.
Okay.
Yeah, 7.5. So that was a good tester for us to
Yeah.
to to see, okay, we're on a boat out in the Pacific Ocean. There's nowhere to go, you can't just jump off and go to shore, and we had a really good time, and the dynamic just felt right. So it was after that trip that we decided, hey, it seems like our family fits well together. Let's get married. And eventually we'll do this with our kids, but more long term, sail. I don't want to say around the world, but that's kind of the hope, is to
Right.
go around the world.
So in August of 2015, the Lauducci family set sail down the coast of California, exploring as they went. I asked Josie how her family made the decision to take such a big trip and what values led them to that decision.
I would say quality time together was a big part of choosing to leave to go sailing. Also, learning through play.
Uh-huh.
Uh, we've noticed, especially raising Taj, very active boy, um, that having the traditional here, sit down and learn this, does not work. And we've met other families that went sailing with their kids, and just their overall ability to communicate with adults, and a variety of age ranges. Like, a 10-year-old can hang out with a 2-year-old, and a 10-year-old can hang out with a 18-year-old, and it all works out. Um, we just really wanted that for our kids, just
Yeah.
to be more accepting of everyone as a whole, a variety of age groups, a variety of cultures and personal beliefs. And so there's that. And I think also just not being so caught up in pop culture and the FOMO lifestyle, the fear of missing out, and um, just enjoying today. And I mean, that's still pretty hard to avoid,
Right, right.
but it's fun. Like, not everyone likes long passages, but um, we did a passage from Mexico to Costa Rica, which was 19 days out at sea. And then our other long passage was from the Galapagos to the Marquesas in French Polynesia, and that was 21 days.
Oh, wow.
And I feel like those times are one of my favorites, just
Really?
because it's just day in and day out, and you're together, and the whole world is doing its thing, there's chaos and all this stuff happening, but we're together as a family on the boat, and it's like, okay, what are we gonna have for breakfast, and what are we gonna do for school today, and then lunch and dinner, and what's outside, and it's just very present, very day to day.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get that otherwise.
Yeah, and it's a skill that you have to learn. So your kids are learning that just naturally, whereas some of us have to work at it to give them those opportunities. I
Right.
mean, not that you're
Yeah.
not working hard, because you are.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a lot of work, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how would you describe your family culture? What do you guys like to do together?
Chaos. No,
Yeah.
it's not chaos. I would say our overall culture is it's very outdoor oriented, active. I would say that's the overall culture. Yeah.
And I'm
Um,
sure that's kind of what attracted you to each other in the first place, you and Christian.
yes, very much so. Yeah, and one thing I left out too was part of why we left was just getting away from that screen time. And
Yeah.
we've never really submitted to it in the first place, but being surrounded by it and then being the parents that were like, no, we're not doing that. This was kind of a way to just be like, well, we don't have that option.
Right. There's
I
no
mean, you
Wi-Fi
can
out
make
on the ocean.
exactly, yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess you could still have plenty of screen time off Wi-Fi, but
Right.
it was kind of because we started that way, it continued to be the way. And for us, it works better. And I don't want to say that it's like a terrible thing because for some people it works just fine, but
Right.
for us,
And it can be used as a tool, or it can be used as a distraction. And
yeah. And our kids, especially Taj, get crazy if if
yeah.
he has any. So it's like, okay, that doesn't work.
One of the decisions the Lauduccis had to make was about school. Josie was nervous about homeschooling at first. She had never experienced it herself, but they figured it out together as a family on the boat, and they really liked it. Then, eventually, they decided to stop in New Zealand for an extended stay where they could work, save some money, enroll the kids in school, and explore the beautiful country. They still live in the boat, docked at a marina. I asked Josie about the transition to a more permanent residence and a more traditional school.
We homeschooled for 4 years, and Nina had experience with public school prior to that. So she had a somewhat of an idea of what it was going to be like, but she went into high school. So that was, I mean, it's a, high school is a whole different thing.
Yeah.
And super nervous, of course, for the first
Yeah.
couple days. And then she's just a really outgoing person. So immediately I had a good group of friends, nice, active friends that, go out mountain biking and
Oh, that's
just,
awesome.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, she's excited to have this like long-term friend thing. You know.
Yeah, that's pretty
Um,
exciting.
yeah, yeah, and she's doing really well. She was actually ahead in a lot of subjects. So a boost of
Nice. That
self-esteem, you know?
yeah, that feels good, I bet.
Yeah, yeah. Like,
Uh,
oh, okay, this homeschooling thing works.
Right. Yeah, self-esteem
Yeah,
for the both of you.
exactly. Yeah. And LMA, so the school system here starts in January, so they both had to skip grades basically. They skipped like 6 months into the next grade higher. So LMA in the States would be in fifth grade, but here she's in sixth.
Uh-huh.
And so she was really nervous that she wouldn't be up to speed as well.
Right.
And again, like totally, I don't want to say bored, but she's like, oh, all of this stuff's really easy, which is, for us, it's like, oh, maybe we should still be homeschooling. But at the same time, she's just getting so much value in the social, you
Right.
know,
Right.
yeah,
And both of those play into her education. So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's
And one of the things we're learning and is more solid along the way is just that, like, it all works out. Like, this whole education thing, when we first started homeschooling we were so nervous about it,
yeah.
or at least I was, especially just, being that responsible person for your child's education. And, the more I relaxed about it and just trusted that they would learn, the easier it was for all of us. But, um, it just happens. It just works, and it's so cool to see.
That's
I mean,
amazing.
yeah, you'd really have to try hard for them not to learn, I feel like. And, thankfully, both Christian and I do it together. So sometimes it's like, Christian, I think you need to take this one.
Tag. You're
Yeah,
in.
you're it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's cool.
Or
Oh, go ahead.
or finding your boat neighbors. Sometimes that helps too. Like, hey, do you have any experience with this? Because our,
Yeah,
our kid could use some non-parenting teaching.
that's great. And because they're probably struggling with the same kind of things, so you can
Yeah,
swap, and
exactly. Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Of course, the biggest educational advantage of the boat life is the experience itself, truly becoming global citizens and learning about the world and how to take care of it. We started this part of the discussion talking about the impact of plastics on the ocean.
Well, being out there where it's very much obvious the effects of plastic in the ocean and the environment, just, I mean, we're in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's hard to be there and not do anything for us. It's, and we're surrounded by people with the same goals. So, I mean, it's like every day Taj will be like, "Plastic, hurry, pick it up." And um there's a little bit of like, oh gosh, there's so much out there, and we hardly make a dent. But then, to teach them like, well, if everyone was like us, then we can make a difference. Um, and yeah, it's just a great community too. Like you meet other people that are ocean ambassadors, and it's a way for us to help for sure. And I mean, not that we're super well known on our blog, but just trying to get the word out there as much as possible.
So, how does that also translate into just teaching them to be global citizens as a whole?
Hmm.
I mean, they
Just
kind of
thinking on
just
a big,
are, right?
yeah,
They are
yeah,
global citizens.
exactly.
They live everywhere.
Yep, yeah. Thinking on a global scale, as we're sailing around, like how does this impact, you know, the world? Like, hey, we were just in Mexico, and this, you know, the straws on the beach are affecting all the turtles. And oh wow, look, we're in the Galapagos, and it's the same thing, but a lot more in the microplastic
Uh-huh.
area. And then, oh, and now we're in Tahiti, and look, the same problem is here too.
Right.
So it's just putting a bigger picture into real life perspective.
That's awesome.
It's, yeah, yeah. And going through Panama was, there's quite a bit of trash in the water,
Oh,
um, and especially like lower Costa Rica, where not as much tourism is, and
uh-huh.
then in Panama, and it's just a lot of it's just because the currents
Okay.
cycle in and just drop everything off on the beaches. But it's very obvious, um, and uh, yeah, it's just sad. Like it's
Yeah.
overwhelming. It's overwhelming, really. Like how on earth can we get rid of this? And we
Yeah.
haven't even seen that plastic island in the middle of the
Oh,
ocean yet.
that's nauseating, those pictures. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, it's a global scale perspective that's slowly, getting solidified as we experience in real life, for
Yeah.
sure.
And what about culturally? How has their cultural worldview been shaped by what you're doing? And yours too.
Yeah, yeah. Mm. Different belief systems. They experience, a variety of like super family oriented to business oriented, you know, not acknowledging families very much and
Uh-huh.
living day to day life quickly, and um, super friendly cultures that are very, very outgoing and want to speak to tourists and foreigners, to cultures that think of tourists as just like, oh, your money coming in and I'll be nice to you, but only because I have to.
Right. Right.
um, they've been to a couple of churches just to experience what this culture does, trying to give them that world knowledge through experience, really.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
little better than a history textbook or geography textbook.
it is. It is. And, sometimes we don't think they're taking it in, and like a year later, they'll say something about that experience. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, it is there. It's sinking in.
What are some of your long-term goals for your family?
uh, just really to give them as much world knowledge as possible
Mhm.
and experience nature and what the world has to offer through a relatively affordable way. Just being able to travel to all these different countries and see how people live differently and still are happy,
Yeah.
even their life is different. Um, most people have to take a plane and spend a lot of money to do that. And arriving to all these countries on water is very cool. And I feel like most cultures um, are more inviting to yachties or to boat people that come by water. It's like, wow, you made a different kind of effort to get
Yeah.
here. And
I hadn't thought about that.
yeah, and usually we have more time to spend there as well, and get to know these cultures.
Yeah.
So yeah, just I really look forward to seeing like how Sri Lanka, how their life there is, and
Right.
or Madagascar, or even like the Seychelles in the middle of the ocean, you know, and Fiji, you hear about how happy the people there are, and like, why is that? And um, yeah, and what I've noticed is the more culture I experience, the easier for me it is just to accept the different ways of living,
Yeah.
or just to be like more at peace with where I am at. Like, oh, everyone's doing things differently, and
Yeah.
it's all working out, and it doesn't have to be one way.
So, do you talk about some of these things? Do you talk about your culture, your values, like your plans for the future, things like that with your kids?
Yeah, we do. Um, Probably more than this stand.
Yeah.
I don't want to label it standard family,
Right. Right.
but just because like right now we're experiencing a little bit of wanderlust because
Yeah.
now we're sitting around a lot more and not sailing, and it's come up quite a bit, like what do we want, and is staying put in New Zealand for 2 or ish years, is that what we want as a family? Is that what's best for the kids?
Uh-huh.
You know, and of course Nina is like, yes, that's what's best for us.
Uh-huh.
Like I want to finish high school, and I would say it's almost a constant conversation
Yeah.
around here of just like, is this working for us? Are our needs being met? Are we going where we want to go? Is everyone feeling satisfied with what's going on? And our choice to be here for 2 years or established residency is what we want to do right now. um, it's hard. It's a bit of compromising for Christian and I, because we
Uh-huh.
really do want to just keep sailing.
Right.
And we kind of always said, well, it's up to the parent to choose, not the kids. But it's like as we talk to our kids and figure out what's going on for the time being, it's like, well, y- yes, we are taking in Nina's consideration to finish high school here and go to university. So, okay, we will stay here and, go through the residency and do that. And, it's It's for us as well, but at the same time, it's as a parent, you're like, okay, this is in the best interest of really the whole family. It's not just
Yeah.
one person.
Yeah, and
And
it's not like you're letting her decide, but you're considering her in your decision. So
yes, exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
I like
So,
that.
and I think that's the key difference.
Yeah.
It's a hard decision to be like, this is what's best for our family, so we're doing it regardless of what many people think is right.
Yeah. Well, I applaud your bravery and everything that you're doing. I think it's so cool. Obviously, because I keep
Uh,
like stalking you and tracking you down, but
I love it.
well, we're just gonna come visit and we'll all stay on your boat with you. That's fine, right?
Oh,
Totally.
totally. We might be able to empty some closet space.
No, my family and I are not going to try to cram onto Josie's boat, but it's so fun to live vicariously through her adventure, especially since there's not much traveling going on these days. But wherever we are, we can work like Josie to create a deliberate family culture, prioritize togetherness, and create our own brand of adventure. Thank you for listening to the How She Moms podcast. If you'd like more resources related to each episode, plus lists of my favorite things and announcements about upcoming topics and events, you can also sign up for my weekly email. You can follow me on Instagram at HowSheMoms and check out howshemoms.com, where you can read or listen to past podcast episodes arranged by topic so you can find answers to the problems you're facing right now. Thanks so much for supporting and making How She Moms possible. And special thanks to my mom, Susan Singley, who recorded my theme music. She played this song often when I was a child, and to me, it's part of the soundtrack of motherhood.